Greetings, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for your time. We're just waiting on a few more folks to jump in, so
Ready,
we will
Kristen?
get it started in a minute. Welcome, Kristen. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. Yep. Thanks for the hour today. You as well, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir. It is our pleasure. And greetings, everyone who's participating. It's growing quite quick, but yeah, if you want to jump in and let us know where you're calling in from, who you are, what your job title is, that might be interesting. And then, yeah, we'll keep the chat open as the call goes on. So feel free to jump in and ask us any questions. And we'll try to at least get to a few of the audience questions as well. Just for a brief introduction, Josh Gillespie here with Omni, head of growth, been in enterprise sales for many years. Really excited to also bring on a few panelists today. David and Sawyer, also, of course, from Omni, our CEO and chief of staff. Kevin Donville, who's one of my mentors in the enterprise space and has been doing enterprise sales since 2001, the original dot-com bust. So also got his career started in a difficult year. I got my career started in 2008, also a difficult year. And then Kristen Connor, who's the infamous, one, also has an amazing record of experience at Tableau and User Gems. And both these fine folks are also now consultants and have their own programs, helping enterprise sales reps and teams figure out how to close big deals and go whale hunting in 2025, which is no small feat. So, greetings to the panel. I think today we have a combined $100 million or so in combined contracts closed won. So we could probably talk for weeks and weeks about enterprise sales. Today we'll try to consolidate it down into an hour and get you guys some good tidbits, some good insights on what's working, what's not, how the space is evolving, all that good stuff. Like I said, throw in some questions in the chat. And then also we'll put links here so you guys can connect with these folks, like connect with us, hit us up on LinkedIn, befriend us, and then yeah, reach out to Kevin and Kristen after the call if you want to engage them more formally on helping your enterprise programs. With that said, let's see if we got any chats yet. Sawyer?
Yeah, we
No?
got we
Let's see.
got I don't know, we got folks from Chicago, Berlin, uh maybe Ethiopia, Charleston, all over.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. Love it. Welcome everyone. And then yeah, we'll get it going because we got a lot to cover today. So sorry if you don't mind helping out being an MC, maybe
Yeah.
take the wheel and let's get it going.
Amazing. All right. So Kristen, I know you just logged in, but I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Yeah, of course.
The question that I think is on everyone's mind, what is the current state of enterprise sales in 2025? How has the enterprise reps role been evolving, and how do you see it continuing to evolve throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think it's nothing new. Everyone's experience has certainly gotten more noisy, right? As folks have, abused platforms like Outreach or SalesLoft, and having been at Outreach, that's no shade. I love it. I think people have just abused some of those things, but it's gotten very noisy in inboxes, right? And now AI is sending all these messages, so it can be that can be it's never been noisier. And if you're in tech, um, budgets have never been tighter than the last couple of years. Buying committees have never been bigger. And then now we have, of course, recently lots of uncertainty in the market as tech especially was starting to kind of get a little more traction. So sales is never easy, but there's definitely been significant challenges the last couple of years. And I think that um, means that what great enterprise selling looks like has like these two crucial things. One is Gartner had a great piece of intel several years ago, research talking about the making sense seller, right? It's not that we struggle. It's not that buyers don't know how to get enough information. It's that they need help making sense of information. And the best enterprise sellers are credibly helping folks do that. And the other thing is great enterprise sellers are dot connecting. They're not dot collecting. We're not collecting information. We are help connecting the dots, and actually, and kind of that kind of brings it naturally back around to Omni. I know it's not a commercial, but like what I fell in love with whenever I saw the product was the way that Omni helps, especially initially when you're doing account research, connect dots quickly, and maybe connect dots that we hadn't thought of. Reps, we still need a human touch, right? We have to be able to do critical thinking, but it helps us do that cycle of thought much more rapidly. And we have to be able to do stuff efficiently to be able to have the kind of account coverage that we need. So long, long story short, two things, like making sense and also connecting dots for folks.
I love that. Yeah. Connecting versus dot collecting. Are there any things like on the flip side of this, any things that enterprise reps should be doing less of? Things that they might have been relying on, last year before that are just not as effective? I know you mentioned outreach and sequences like that. Anything else?
To be fair, I think folks should be doing less activity for activity's sake. And that can be swimming upstream, especially if we have managers or other leaders that just want to be able to say, well, my reps are doing 50 calls a day, or my reps are sending out 300 emails a day. We have to be able to understand that that is noise, and that we do not get paid to send email. We get paid to close deals. The best managers and leaders understand that, but they are also under fire, right? When revenue isn't what it should be, when pipeline isn't where it is, and sometimes they are trying to protect us by showing activity, right? But we need to think about activity versus impact, right? And being able to help leaders equip us to be able to make an impact, and not necessarily think about just activity. Whenever it is in SMB, or whenever we have a lot of inbound, sometimes it's just a volume game, but enterprise is really never that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are great insights. And it sounds like maybe one of the things we need right now is a new framework for sales. And I know, Kevin, that's something that you know a thing or two about.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe, would you mind telling us a little bit about the MOVE framework and what you're writing about thank you, Josh, Winning
Mhm.
Faster?
So to your point, I mean, everything that Kristen was just saying, I'm completely on board with. And a lot of that is what inspired my business partner, Matt, and I, we've been selling together for over 30 years in the space, that kind of prompted us to go and write the book. One of the main points of that framework, and understand, I've not only been in charge of pre-sales and working as carrying a bag, worked on services and worked on sales enablement. So that's the perspective this is coming from. One of the things that was always interesting to me when I'd be out there either pushing for the adoption and the adherence to a methodology, or when I was trying to teach people a methodology, everybody was learning the methodology without understanding why they were doing it. Why am I asking any of these questions? And more importantly, how does the information I'm collecting, how is it relevant to anything else that I'm trying to deliver, or any of the other steps I'm going to run into? So we wrote the MOVE framework, which, by the way, MOVE is an acronym. It stands for motive. Why are they doing anything? What's driving them? What should be driving them? It's all about helping the customer not just be able to go and give you their information, but help them discover things about themselves and about their own situation that they need to be aware of. And that ties into the next one, which is O, which is opportunity. Can they act? And that's something that I find a lot of methodologies don't really teach, and how those two talk to one another. What's the dependencies and cross references between the two about, yeah, they want to act, but can they? And then that leads into V, which is value, which is all about mapping what you can deliver, the value that you can deliver to them, to your solution, so the customer can understand it and build their business case internally. And E stands for engagement, which is the execution and delivery of that, not just for this deal, but how do you build that so that it continues to deliver value over the entire relationship? And it talks about being able to bring all the different teams together, not just your teams as a seller, but the customer's teams as the buyer for not only the win now, but the win in the future, and just getting totally embedded with them. And that's why we wrote that framework, because it's designed to synthetically create the same effect of being a very curious person, someone who wants to go and ask a million questions and connect the dots, but do it quickly and do it very effectively. So that's why we wrote that methodology. And that's where I think sellers need to be going today. To Kristen's point, don't do activity just for its own sake. Don't ask questions just for their own sake. You know, everything that you ask a customer, every time you interact with them, you should be either strengthening your value or helping them uncover something about themselves or understanding something deeper about them that allows you to deliver more value to them over time.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you describe that framework and the structure you put behind it, just because it feels like going a level deeper than MedPick, which is really what we need nowadays as the sales landscape, especially in the enterprise, is getting more challenging. And Kristen, you said something in the chat that I absolutely love, which is, if MedPick is the how, Move is the why. So I guess a question for you, Kristen, and Kevin as well. Why is it so critical that we get past the how and the what and into the why? Like, what does that unlock for a seller? Why should that be invested in sales training and just as in someone's personal practice and development?
Well, if you don't understand the why, you don't understand what's driving the project you're trying to sell to. MedPick will get, by the way, I'm a big fan of a lot of the methodologies that are out there. And we actually talk about in the book how to interact what we're trying to teach you, because it's a different angle of going at this different information. It's meant to enhance those, not necessarily replace. They can absolutely coexist, because to your point, what is really driving this? Why are they doing it? Why do they need to be successful? And why do they think they can be successful with our solution? Being able to go and map that to a customer is critically important, because, and we'll maybe get to this a little bit later on in our session today, you absolutely have to drive a compelling business case and argument from day one, almost exactly when you go in. Kristen talked a little bit about that, right? With just the speed at which people are working and your ability to add clarity and context to what they do know. So that's why it's so important.
I think I'm a big fan of analogies. I think because my brain is simple and I like word pictures, right? I think one of the ones that I can think of that kind of neatly sums up what we've been talking about is we accidentally bought a house last year that needed the floors redone. That was not our intention, which is a whole different story. But there was a compelling event and we had pain. Like, we were not able to unpack our boxes until all of our floors were redone. It was awful. We had no budget, right? But all of a sudden we found budget, which is also a whole different story. But we called in all of these contractors to come give me a quote, give me a quote. Now, they all had hundreds of good Google reviews. They all had great, like, Better Business Bureau standings. Like, we had done all of the homework as far as, like, these were good vendors to be looking at. And with, I think we called in 13 contractors, all of them had very happy ears to give me a quote for what I asked for. They all did that. Only one said, you know what, I can do that. But if you're okay with it, I'd like to actually also, like, I wanted my concrete floors redone. And he said, I also would like to talk to you a little bit about tile. And I want to talk to you a little bit about wood. I'm just going to give you the pros and cons of each of those, because I think there are things there that you might not be considering. I just want you to be able to make a good decision. Right. And he brought up things that I had never thought of. He could do what I asked, but he went beyond that. Right. So the other contractors that just handed me a quote, they were good at the what. They got that to me very quickly. Right. He was talking about the why. Why would you want to do this? What's the why behind each of these decisions? And they were certainly not the cheapest, but that's who we ended up going with, because that, when we talk about this, salespeople want to be trusted advisors, that's very easy to say, and it can mean nothing. When I think about what does a trusted advisor look like, I still think of that guy. I still think of him standing in my kitchen talking to me. I didn't ask for that information, but he gave it to me because he knew something I didn't, and he was able to be a good guide. And, like, if nothing else, we should be good guides, helping people make good decisions.
I love that story. That's so good. Paints an amazing picture.
Is that guy looking for an SDR job? Because yeah, we're
Yeah.
hiring this year.
Yeah. Well, so I want to switch gears a little bit to something that is an elephant in the room, which is AI and technology. And this is an area where everybody's thinking about it. Of course, it's a part of everybody's life in sales. But it's another area where we were talking about just going through the motions of activity. I think a lot of companies are just going through the motions of like plug in some AI, plug in some tech, and kind of hope for the best. So I guess Josh, help us kind of cut through the noise and the marketing and like what actually should we be thinking about when it comes to using AI in enterprise sales? And then what are maybe some of the limitations that we're facing?
Limitations. I'm the AI sales guy. What are you talking about? No. No, it's a great question, right? And I think we're all kind of saturated already with AI, B2B tech, and it's kind of overwhelming. Like enterprise sellers have the least amount of time to evaluate new tech. And so yeah, happy to kind of bring some clarity because like I think these tools are very powerful in a couple of ways, but still leave a gap that's important to note. So a lot of these technologies like Omni is amazing at researching publicly available data. So we don't have to go online and Google and do all this research ourselves, right? Like that's how I used to differentiate myself as an enterprise rep was just working 80 hours a week, like looking after hours for golden nuggets of relevance and evidence of opportunity and compelling events that I can leverage to make my prospecting feel more organic and event-based. So certainly like AI can cut your time in researching the internet, right? And finding all of those golden nuggets from like a few hours down to a few minutes. Cool. We also have technologies that can look at internal systems. So looking at all of my CRM, right? Call notes, the transcripts from our prior engagements. That's another piece, right? That's important to know before we engage a company is what were the prior engagements. And surely, you can cut down your time there. But it's important to note that there's a gap in like why, even though I sell AI and I'm a huge fanatic in a lot of ways, I also don't believe it will ever replace us. Why is that? Because the best information, right, we can get about an account comes from a human. Like, there's no way, like, it's not publicly available information, and we don't have an API that syncs up, right, into our customers' databases. So, like, when you're trying to understand power dynamics or who's who in the zoo, the authority levels, the real stakeholders that you need to become champions to get to the finish line, the holders of that information are people, and you need to extract that information from them because they know their organizations best in real time. And whether I have a public-facing AI or an internal system, right, for research and data aggregation, there's still this big gap through which, yeah, human interaction is required, and we still have to do our preparation. We still have to build rapport. We have to build trust. We have to peel the onion to get to the real pains that prospects don't want to talk about openly and give you that gold until you've done your job in solidifying yourself as an expert for them. So yeah, the real gold of it all is always still going to come, human to human.
Awesome. And before I ask the next question, I just want to make a note for the chat. I'm looking at the chat right now. If anybody watching has questions, feel free to type them in, and I'll try to work them in. And we'll have time for a Q&A later, but don't feel like you have to wait till the end. Just drop the chat, questions in the chat, and we'll get to them.
We actually we do have a good question around using AI for pipeline generation, right?
Oh,
Because
okay.
I think there is that's probably one of the bigger use case of AI right now. And I think everybody kind of tend to think about AI SDR when we talk about AI for pipeline generation. But kind of my question to you guys is what are some other ways to use AI for pipeline generation?
Yeah, I mean, I would just step in and say, beware. Like, like to talk more about the quality over quantity game. Beware any AI tech that's really focused on volume-based like motions. And so like, yeah, there's the spam filters on our emails, like the efficacy of our cold calling, of our LinkedIn messaging at scale is all going down to Kristen's point because all of those motions are saturated. Everyone's doing it. There's so much volume that even if your message is to the right person at the right time and it's perfect and it gets through the spam filters, it's still likely to be ignored. So we're in a weird space where I think we assume new technology should make our jobs easier and faster and better, but kind of beware of grandiose claims or overpromises on this front. Like the whole term personalization at scale seems like kind of a misnomer to me, where I'm very skeptical of yeah the AI SDRs obviously, and instead I think yeah looking to leverage AI in ways that make me more strategic, right? Again, make me faster at being a slower sales rep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that maybe probably the meta point here is that, being strategic applies to both, to kind of both top of the funnel and middle and, bottom of the funnel as well, right? Like even for pipeline generation, you still need to be strategic, right? And it's still not 100% a volume game. Is that sort of a good way to summarize it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the pipeline generation is, I think one of the, it's never easy, but I think it's one of the hardest things now because there are so many things out there, right? And people can very easily get into analysis paralysis. So being able to cut through that noise with messaging that makes sense, that is a point of view that's specific to them. But I also think that still matters mid and late funnel because customers will continue to have those questions as they see, because then they'll go out, if once we raise an issue or bring a PV, many times they'll be like, oh, well, now I need to do due diligence, and they'll continue to go out and find things. So we have to be continually looking at that to be able to help them make sense of all of that information. Uh, one of the ways I like to think about it, again, like my contracting friend, is thinking about ourselves as buying guides, right? And then creating resources around that. So I've done that in, just to get very tactical, I've done that in two ways. One of which is creating like a template or a snippet that I would put at the end of an email at a certain point in the conversation, like saying, just like my contracting friends, like saying, hey, folks at this stage, some of the things they said they wish they had considered, or two questions they wish they would have, they say they wish they would have asked are this and this. Of course, we're doing things that do help customers make a good decision and ideally should highlight the things that we're good at that they should be considering, right? So there's like, that's like a short version. And then if we are selling really in-depth detailed enterprise platforms like an ERP, sometimes they like entire like buying guides, sometimes the organization develops those. But if you're like me and you've worked with some companies that aren't that big or that advanced yet, sometimes individual reps have to work on creating buying guides, right? Like here's some questions and considerations around this technology. Like the more that we can do that helps folk make sense, not only regard to, like the impact that we can deliver, but what we can deliver specifically based on where they are, right? Like what's happening with them specifically. But yeah, that point of view and research doesn't stop just because now it's in pipeline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you need to continue to add value, right? In every single communication. I think that's like the hardest thing in like these 9 to 12 month sales cycles is how do I continuously add value and be a true partner? And to Kevin's point, continue to drive novel insights in ways that the business might not understand. And that's much harder than my initial value prop might get me so far with like an initial coach or champion. We might have a good discovery call, but then how else am I continuously adding value? Requires continual research, right, into this account. And so, yeah, the job never starts as far as trying to search for value add.
Well, and I think just from talking to a lot of enterprise reps, half of the challenge is even just, before you can even think about adding value, it's figuring out who are my stakeholders? Who am I even trying to work with here? There are, of course, the folks who show up on the Zoom calls or in the meetings, but then there's so many people behind the scenes who you may not never even speak with. So I guess, Kevin, a question for you. Given all the people involved in an enterprise sales cycle, how do you approach finding them and validating the power structures and kind of drawing out that whole map?
Well, this is where you got to go back to being a little bit old school, right? It's all about talking to people, asking questions, and looking at what you hear with the idea of the framework in your mind. How to, what's the problem? How do I solve it? Who could be connected to that? And start figuring out where the consequences of the things you're hearing about as you're doing your discovery and meeting with people, how does that how does that radiate out from the people you've talked to, and who in the organization may structure that, and talking with the people that you are already meeting with, and then questioning them about the same, getting them to think that way, and then validating any assumptions you may build along the way about who may also be touched with this, who may also partially own, or even to some degree own more, have greater ownership of the challenge or the consequences of the challenge that we're talking about, that we're trying to solve. And that, by adopting that as kind of the way that you're engaging with the customer, you will be able to find those champions. And it's important to note, and this is kind of in keeping with the theme of the last thing we were just talking about, that champion may change over time. As you're going through finding out and validating and reconfirming and affirming what you know, you may find out, and this is part of that continual discovery process with the customer, they want to buy this, they can't. They need to reach out and find other people inside of that organization to help them do that. They don't have the budget, they don't have the power, they don't have the influence, whatever it is. They need additional support, helping them to come to that conclusion, and then leveraging them because of their proximity to the political structure to help you ferret out those people very, very quickly is a very effective strategy to go and find those champions quickly.
Yeah. At this stage of the funnel, I mean, Kristen, I'd love your input as well, just around the same topic. I mean, I know you have the 3x3x3 method for multi-threading. Would love to hear about that and how that sort of fits into this strategy that Kevin's describing, and your take on that overall.
Yeah. So that's a framework that I started using just because I think I always need systems that I can repeat, right? Like once I find something that's decent, like, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel with every deal. And so this 3x3x3 framework is how I think about multi-threading at the beginning of the deal when we don't have a champion who's at power, right? So hear me say, when we're not at power yet. If we have a VP or C level that is clearly a champion that wants to go to bat for us, like, this is not the time to use that. But most of the time, I mean, we need to do something differently there. But most of the time, it is much easier to get that initial call with a manager or a director, right? Like, they have the on the ground problem. And so it's just easier to book those initial calls with them. So when we have that booked, then the 3x3x3, there's like, so 3 different threes. The first is finding 3 VP or C-level, like leadership positions who are typically involved in evaluating what I sell. So maybe it's HR, finance, and legal, right? So if I know that these departments are usually involved, then I want to find leaders in each of those departments and just send them a note that says, hey, I have a meeting with your colleague, may or may not use their name, depending on situation and industry. Here's the topic of that meeting. Executives aren't always involved in these conversations, but sometimes they do want an invite based on KPIs that they care about. I'll forward you the invite. And either way, no worries. I'll send you the readout afterwards, and then sending them. And then that's 3 executives before the first meeting. That's the first 3. 3 actions before the first meeting. I want to go see if they have written anything on LinkedIn or Twitter, X, right? Like anything that we can add value to, not just like great post, but something that comments on the essence of what they're talking about, right? If they just talked about a company offset that they did, for first quarter, then rather than saying like, hey, it looks like a great team. No, it's, hey, it looks like you really value team building and that you're building an amazing culture there, right? We're speaking to the value. It's like, I see you, right? And also, no one else outside their company is commenting on that. It's just people that are kissing up to them from their own team and their own company, right? So
Yeah.
that's a way for us to be top of mind and to add value our pictures attached to that, right? So we comment on something, we add value, then we can connect with them on LinkedIn, mentioning that post. Saw the amazing offsite you guys did in Phoenix. Looks like a great culture, right? And then, and then sending that note. We can send it via LinkedIn if they're on LinkedIn, and then a 3-step follow-up, right? We send them like a bulleted follow-up of like, hey, we had the meeting. Here's 2 points that impact you. Here's what's happening. Here's the next meeting, and I'll continue to keep you in the loop. And then I set up actually 2 sequences, but hear me, they are sequences where the reminders are automatic, but the tasks are manual. It's to remind me to keep, if they are present on LinkedIn or Twitter, to keep following up with them so that I don't forget and trail off and forget to add value there. And then also a reminder to keep them in the loop as far as what meetings are happening, especially in enterprise, but even in 200 plus person companies, the left hand frequently does not know what the right hand is doing. And when I say connect the dots, sometimes that means telling them what other departments are doing. Hey, finance did have a meeting about this. This is what they decided. Here's in our next meeting. So they don't have to go chase down that finance leader who they have never met because they're a 4,000 person company, right? And they just joined. And I will say sometimes we think of these where we're saying like, hey, we're meeting with all these other departments. Sometimes we have this feeling of, oh my gosh, what if people feel like we're going around them, or what if this isn't relevant? Done the right way, these can be some of the biggest value adds, because what leaders know, what true leaders know is if finance and HR can both benefit from the same solution, that means nobody has to pay for it all by themselves, right? That is a way to add value. Sometimes just bringing the connections in from their own company, but we have to get our minds right around that it really is a help. And yeah, we are going to occasionally get our hands slapped, but we're in sales. It's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I'm struck by listening to you and Kevin describe how you approach this middle of the funnel, middle of the pipeline kind of period of multi-threading and stakeholder management. It's all about human intelligence, right? Like I can't imagine an AI account executive being able to sort of succeed in this environment. But I have to imagine that there is a time and place for technology to support an enterprise account executive here. Would love to hear a little bit about how and where you both have seen some newer technologies be successful. And Josh, would love your take on this as well. But yeah, I don't know, Kevin or Kristen, would love your take.
I'll go first. There are a lot of different places that I see these tools coming into play now to streamline and support the activity that Kristen and I both just talked about here. And for example, being able to quickly consolidate and structure up multiple sources of information. There's even been some people talking about that in chat. Being able to take those together to provide, okay, here's the most relevant information to you. And that gives you a starting point to begin a more effective analysis or a structuring of the tactics you're going to use to go into an organization. That in and of itself is a huge time saver and a big scaling opportunity for any AE to cut through the noise and being able to focus. But to the point that you just brought up a moment ago, it doesn't take the human being out of the equation. And I've seen some people even talking about this particular foible in chat. Just because you have a tool doesn't mean it's giving you value, right? We're talking about here specifically, how is this going to help me be a better seller? If you can incorporate it into your daily practice, if it can accelerate or improve or enhance the things that you are doing that you know you need to be doing in order to be effective, that's the tool for you. If you have the tool and all you're doing is just spending time feeding the tool and you're getting nothing out of it, and it's not changing the way or accelerating the way that you're doing business, that's probably the wrong tool for you. And you should consider either using a different tool or dropping that angle altogether. So that's kind of a couple of ways I've looked at it. And I love Kristen, she brought up a story earlier on. So an analogy I would use is like, if anybody's ever bought a gym membership thinking that they want to get in shape, did buying the gym membership help you? No. Going to the gym and pumping iron is what helped you because you incorporated that into your daily practice. So the tools that can do that, you can incorporate into your daily practice and make the other things you're doing more effective. That's the litmus test. That's the yardstick you should be evaluating those tools by. And it'll be different for different organizations in the way that different people sell.
And like where so many of these deals, even with really large enterprise, begin with virtual meetings because they do not want to bring you on site into their conference room when they don't really know you like that yet,
You
right?
can't get a badge for discovery, Kristen? No? Okay.
I wish. Um, but no, I like to use AI tools that are like predictive of people's personalities because I want to know in general, is it more effective if I'm prospecting Kevin, is it or David, is it more productive for me to use a story with them or a statistic? Which should I start with there, right? Like any AI that is like predictive like that, I want to because if I have the best message in the world, but I'm speaking the wrong language, the person will not understand. So I'm using that to be able to say, okay, which language should I speak as I'm reaching out to these different folks? Same message, just in different languages, right? Um, and then also, I like to use like tools like Omni or giving feed specific prompts into different GPTs about finding me like little known biographical nuggets about these folks. One example, I was coaching an enterprise rep who's in the med device space, and he was working with this particular VP of quality. And so we were looking for, and Josh, this is what I was talking to you about. Like we were looking for like little biographical things. And turns out she went to this tiny school in Ireland, and it had this particular slogan. And we used that slogan to tied it into the value prop to get attention because that is clearly very well researched and very personal. It's for her, right?
Yeah.
But the faster we can find information like that, the faster we can begin to connect those dots.
Yeah. And if I could just chime in, I would say like for my sales students at Always Hire Bootcamp, I always tell them in academia, like in this learning environment setting, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask me anything you want. In a business setting, there's a lot of stupid questions you can ask, and they're usually the ones that infer you didn't do your preparation, you didn't do your research prior to the call. So when I think about the best utilization of AI, for me, it's really two facets right now. It's research being the foundation of any good sales motion, right? Like, let's leverage AI to go find those golden nuggets so I don't have to spend hours doing it. The other thing is if we're leveraging a tool like Omni or whatever to do that research, from there, the other thing that used to take me a lot of time was the building of deliverables, mutual action plans, SWOT analyses, account plan templates in G Drive. Like these are hour-long tasks plus, right? Even once we do all the research, to then aggregate those golden nuggets into something else manually. So yeah, use AI for strategic account-based research. We'll show you guys a demo here coming up in 15 minutes. I think one of the chatters wanted to see it. And then also to potentially build, right, documents or collateral or yeah, deliverables that would otherwise cause you to waste time.
Yeah. Um, would I was just gonna say, would love some audience questions if there are any. I don't know if folks can unmute themselves if they have that ability. But from Abash, we've got, uh, for the group, I think recommended best practices for internal comms across teams, or any recommended tools for communication. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, sort of that internal communication throughout a sales cycle.
You don't like Slack? No, just kidding. One thing I'll say on the internal comms front, which I think is the most important thing, and I know Kristen teaches a lot of new, enterprise sales reps that are doing it for the first time and folks who have been promoted up. Like at the end of the day, we're still in the business of storytelling. And so my first like task whenever I started a new role, the last two times at least, was in the first week like go through all the standard onboarding programs, right? Like you do need to become a product expert. You do need to understand the systems of record and how they're utilized. But the most important thing I think a new seller can do that's working at market is reach across the aisle, go talk to all of your CSMs and your account managers and those who hold the relationships with clients post sale because they have really great stories. They know the common objections. They know the issues that occur, right, during onboarding and implementation. I would ask them, who's your favorite sales rep to work with and why? How do you want your handoffs to go? And they can get you so much good information that you can then repurpose and use from a storytelling perspective.
Mhm.
The other thing is my favorite sales play in the world. And like enterprise sales is slow, right? Like there's a force multiplier of all these people and stakeholders and security and legal and IT review that needs to get involved. You're still going to have to jump through those hoops, right? And those hoops might be a 6 month process, even at the time you've made the business case and get to a verbal. So I'm looking to get into that paper process as quickly as possible and avoid having to give like one-off demos to 100 different stakeholders or even fly on site or do all of this tasks like just to push like the needle or the bar up like step by step. How do I get from like first base to third as quickly as possible? I think after you have a good discovery call, whether it's with a coach or a champion or whomever, but let's say that call feels good, you align on the need, they say nice things about your product, they commit to introducing you around the org. No matter what that is, if it's a good discovery call, my favorite like next step is to say, hey, great. As a next call, would it help if I brought an existing customer to the call and talk to you about their experience using our platform and their
Yeah,
experience working with us? No one ever says no to that. And what's cool is like you can set up that call and you just sit back and you have your existing client, right? Do your job for you. And that's a lot more trustworthy in a way than you having a second call with an executive and trying to say just as much. Like it just comes a lot more believable from your customer. What that requires is that you have a really good relationship with your CSMs and AMs so that you can tap into their Rolodex of clients, right? Because that you need like 20 or 30 of those guys willing to come on and say how amazing you are. And the other really cool thing I like about that is if they agree to that second call with the customer, that's now a reason to send them a mutual NDA, which kicks off a paper process a little
Mhm.
earlier. And now we're like multi-threading through that paper process to their legal. And a mutual NDA is like doesn't need to get redlined all crazy. It usually transacts pretty quick, but it brings my legal and their legal together. It lets their legal
Really?
know there's a project on the way. And then it opens up the information sharing and gathering quickly because there's trust that we signed a legal document. They're not going to share any of our pains with others as we express them. So, yeah, my favorite play in the world after discovery call is leverage your book of business, get them to do the sell for you. And if that call almost always goes well, now the customer believes it, right? The prospect believes it in a way that might not require so much demos
That's
across the
great.
org and starting a trial or a proof of concept. They already spoke to
Yep.
a real customer, so we're already at third base. So use that.
Yeah, so Josh, I'm a big fan of what you're just talking about there. I know I worked a lot of different companies, and that tactic sometimes doesn't. Because you where you are in the life cycle, you can't bring the customer yet into that meeting with your prospect, but you've got your secondary sources, pre-sales who've worked your proofs of concept, and they're the ones who do the demo, so they understand how to apply solution to problem, and the folks that are delivering the solution out in the field. The reason why it becomes so effective with them and why it's such a force multiplier on talking to your prospect is because you're using their vernacular. If you've ever listened to those conversations, and those of you that have gone, I've seen a lot of you folks have those there. If you've recorded them, go take a look at the way that those conversations take place. They're going to be different. People aren't talking about the features and capabilities of the platform. They're not talking about, the great new thing that you've got on your website. They're talking about what was the problems that this customer had, what was the challenge they had, what was the need that they had, and here's how we fixed it. They don't talk about the bells and whistles, the buttons, the levers that are pulled in the solution. They're talking about fixing problems. And that's why it resonates so much better and can become such an accelerator in getting from initial discovery conversation to I'm on board. We need to go and execute on this. So wholeheartedly support what you're talking about there, Josh.
Awesome. One final question for the group here, and then I want to break for Josh, who's going to show us all how he uses AI and to really execute on some of these plays. But first, I know there are a lot of folks who are starting their enterprise sales job or aspire to become an enterprise seller in the near future. And it's one of those roles where, like, as you know, Kristen, right? And this is a role where you can be making $1 million a year if you play your cards right and do everything well. Let's say I'm a new enterprise seller. How do I get myself to that $1 million a year? What do I need to be doing this year? And how should I be preparing for the future as well?
Yeah. So when I think about that, I think of a couple of things that are just foundational, and again, I like things that are simple and just principles that extend across the whole sale. And like we talked about this idea of like connecting dots, right? But um I think about two things. What's in it for me and reducing friction, right? Sale to me, sales like boils down to those two things, right? What's in it for me? And as somebody asked a question about internal comms, especially in enterprise where you have a large extended internal selling team, it's also you need to figure out what's in it for the people that are selling with you, right? What do they want? Does that subject matter expert, VP, want to be promoted because they are attached to large deals coming in? Does your new CSM or your new SC, like, are they brand new and they need to get their name out there? What do they want? Do they just want to be seen as a team player? Do they want to be seen as the most valuable player on their team? What do they want? Right. And then the people that you're working with on the outside, what do they want? Do they want to get promoted? Do they want to save? They want to keep their team from working 80 hours a week and they're altruistic? Like not what you think they should want, not the problems that our thing easily solves, but like, what do they want and how can we make it easy for them to get it? Right. So friction reduction, like Josh was talking about, like things like getting those paper processes, getting that legal stuff done sooner. And one of the fastest ways to get that, as Josh mentioned, is to talk to your internal folks that have been there a long time, including, I like to look at, whenever I'm new to a role, I like to look at sellers that have repeatedly done well, like over the past couple of years, right? A track record of consistently doing well. And then going to them, not saying, can I pick your brain, but be like, hey, it looks like you have done, your results have been this, this, and this. I have 3 specific questions for you. Would you like it in Slack, or could I put 15 minutes on your calendar? If they want it in Slack, is like, what are the 5 customer stories I should absolutely know before I do anything else? What are the 2 things you wish you had done right from the beginning? And what are 2 things that you spent time on that you didn't actually need to do? They can answer that very quickly in Slack, or they can, I had a mentor that I worked with at Tableau she sold to the Fortune 50s. And she was like, I'll meet with you, every other week. Thing won't always happen, but we can start those conversations. Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, the basics are what gets us there, and we just have to learn how to apply those in our situation.
Yeah. I would echo a lot of that. Where it's crazy to me, it feels like a lot of salespeople, even successful one, don't have the best internal relationships with their resources.
Crazy.
And that's crazy because enterprise is a team game. Whether I'm relying on my SDR to help prospect and feed me, my SE to help manage all of the difficult technical questions that are sure to come. Um, and here's a nuanced one. I had a great relationship with my legal team, my GC,
Oh, yeah.
which had some hidden benefits. Because if your own legal team doesn't like the deals that you're servicing, or if you're like nagging them to accept red lines, that's their job to evaluate and accept or reject. You're in a weird spot where if your own legal team sees your deals as being iffy, they're not gonna work with you on them. I think I actually achieved getting certain red lines approved that other reps didn't, purely because of my friendship with my legal team and being able to explain to them why the risks were such on paper from this specific client, and try to like make those legal negotiations, which can be quite fraught at the end, a little softer. And so yeah, there's like, it'll impact your conversion rate if you don't have good relationships internally.
Any last words on this one, Kevin?
Well, I just want to comment on what Josh was saying. Being able to bring together your team. It's not just you can't, it would be very hard to be successful in this industry at the enterprise level if you do not know how to marshal together internal resources. You need to learn how to map that just as effectively as you do the customers. Think about the whole reason why you're learning that, what the power structure looks like at that prospect. It's so that you can get decisions made and walk a deal through. You need to know how that works in your own organization as well. And leveraging each team member to their strengths is critical to making that work, not just for winning this deal, but aligning those resources for continual value delivery to the customer so that in your absence, the other people that are going to be touching that people that prospect, there's going to be a lot of them. They know and they're on board and they understand what makes that person successful and how do we be the most effective partner to them that we could possibly be. You need to learn the internal workings of your organization intimately in order to make that work.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I love that. I mean, it really feels like enterprise sales, both externally facing, customer facing, and internally, is really just about leveraging relationships and managing those relationships to create the most value for both sides. And it's never an easy thing. And yeah, I mean, Josh, would love for you to show us the other side of a lot of this. The sales strategy that we've been talking about here is how do you make the best use of your tools to support the strategic work that you're doing on relationship building and pipeline generation in the enterprise?
Yeah, just be aware of over relying on tools. Tools are just tools. They're not the salesperson. They're not you. So again, yeah, just I think there's a lot of need to leverage new tools to make our job easier. And I get that because sales is freaking hard, right? Like making cold calls, sending out cold campaigns, trying to build value from scratch is difficult. So we want tools to work really well and do our job for us in a lot of these ways. But be skeptical. And yeah, probably less is more, especially if the tools themselves are making grandiose claims on this front.
Yeah, I mean, and as for a tool that, ideally is not making any grandiose claims, but is really walking the talk, would you want to give everybody a walkthrough of Omni?
Yeah. And shout out Lynn, by the way, that's great. Yeah, she's talking about mutual action plans and how a lot of those plans have timelines and deliverables for internal resources and tasks, right? Whether it's your legal work that needs to be done on all the paper stuff, IT and security reviews, or RFPs, right, are usually cross-functional endeavors where, again, if people don't like you, the internal resources aren't going to prioritize your task that you had for them over all the other things they're doing. So yeah, it feels like a lot of the reasons actually enterprise deals stall out is because of internal tasks and items taking too long. So that's great, great call out, Lynn. And then yeah, happy to show you guys Omni today. Again, we've tried to dumb down Omni a bit for salespeople like me because we don't want to become prompt engineers and we don't have time to spend learning something so complicated. Make it easier for me to get to the goal. So when you sign up for Omni, you'll do so with your business address. And as soon as you do that, we're starting to do deep research on you and your organization. So you don't have to feed us like paragraphs of context and train the model over time. We'll just immediately, understand your selling disposition, who your buyer personas are, what your product and service offerings are, who you're competing with funding against, what are your customer stories, right? And we want to have all of that context before we start doing strategic research on your behalf. And so, yeah, you can come in here and make edits, add files to build this out a bit. But within 5 minutes of signing up for a trial, we know who you are and we've got a lot of information about you with which we can be strategic. From there, we can run research on accounts. And so there's a lot of potential research, right, that we could aggregate into kind of standard market research reports and company research reports. If you're an enterprise and you only have 10 to maybe 100 named accounts, you probably want to get to know those accounts intimately, which means you do need to spend still some manual time researching the research because this isn't a crutch that you want to lean on to the effect where you actually don't get to know an account, right? Like most of our work is still done on phone calls, on Zooms, in person, where I need to ask smart questions on the basis of this research. So you still need to research the research. From there, though, what's my evidence of opportunity? And I think a lot of the nouveau applications and the legacy apps are kind of addicted to like making sales reactive and signal chasing. And sure, like there are signals worth reacting to that we should probably pay attention to. But if that's 100% of like our sales game, we're probably not being proactive in figuring out how to drive value in our named accounts as we should. And so that's what we're doing here, where it says AI strategies, is we're just combing the entire world of online information, publicly available information, but stuff that would be hard or take hours for us to find. Because like the golden nuggets of relevance are hidden, right? In blog posts, on social media, on websites, on podcast transcripts. And yeah, Omni can very powerfully go scour and monitor all of those resources and then give you back what looks to be evidence of opportunity. Because my first step, right, when I'm thinking about engaging a new account is what are 10 reasons that I can find publicly available, whether it's on a 10K or again, like a strategic initiative or somebody's blog post or a Glassdoor review of somebody angry on the way out, right? Like what are 10 pieces of evidence I can point to that suggest my prospecting now to you is evidenced by a need outside of my own value prop, right? And then that helps me already kind of focus on a qualitative game versus a quantitative game. And so, yeah, even just for Wiz, right? It found 30 or so articles that I can look at to see if it makes sense for me to reach out. And I can point to these articles as to why. So that's the first step. Oops. The second thing is just asking whatever you want, right? So, like, help me build an account plan. Because now that we've done the research, we can create deliverables. Build me an account plan and a value pyramid for Wiz. And this is quite powerful. I'm sure many folks are using ChatGPT, but think of this as leveraging all of the frontier models concurrently, right? Because when you ask different models the same question, you get different outputs. So we're leveraging them all because depending on the query, different ones will have, better or worse results. So here's my account plan. But then as Kristen was talking about her 3x3, sorry, I'll scroll to the bottom here. I was also like, please complete Kristen Connor's 3x3x3 methodology for multi-threading into this account. And Kristen's program's publicly available. So it looked at that, it analyzed that, and now it's giving me 3 key business initiatives that I should keep track of that may be relevant at Wiz, the 3 key personas, right, that I should be thinking about when I talk to my coach or champion, 3 multi-threading strategies on aligning executives and engagement approach, support, technical champion development. So as far as like creating content, right, takes forever. This is like a big place where we can leverage AI, but you want to do it somewhere that already has all that research context as the foundation to ensure you get to a good output here. But yeah, you can ask it for certain methodologies to create mutual action plans and really just inform your POV, right, as quickly as possible before you start your outreach. So that's how I use Omni. I plug in an account and I research an account just as I would before, but instead of taking many hours, it takes a couple of minutes.
Amazing. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so we've got 2 more minutes. Want to see if anyone else from the audience has any questions. We'll take them. And so just drop them in the chat.
Sure.
But also just while we're here in the last couple of minutes, thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate everyone's amazing questions and commentary. Kevin and Kristen, thank you both for your time. Insights are amazing. Recording will be available. You'll get it all emailed to you. This has been super interesting. So many good insights.
Quick question for the audience. Is anyone experimenting with avatars? I think this is like a kind of another thing that's coming down the pipe is like video avatars, voice avatars. Anyone experimenting with that stuff? Just curious. Guess not. For me, it's interesting. I'm not sure I would use a video avatar yet, even though like video messages on LinkedIn convert well, right? Probably it's going to convert less if it's obvious that it's AI. But something more subtle is voice notes on LinkedIn convert really, really well. There's a number of platforms that can record your voice with like a 30-second snippet. and then it's going to sound like you when you feed it a script. And that might be something worth experimenting with, where if the recipient can't tell that I'm doing that, I might be able to leverage AI to make a lot of voice notes on LinkedIn and send those out quickly. So that's one area of AI that I'm also looking at that's kind of new. But yeah, it's interesting, right? Because now we're getting into this deep fake world, which could get kind of crazy pretty quick.
Yeah, I've seen them kind of used for training, which is sort of interesting. Like you can almost like practice objection handling, practice your pitch. They still seem a little robotic, but it's better than just like reading something off a piece of paper.
Yep. Anil, did you have a question? Jump on in. We got 30 seconds for you. So
Yes, yes, Josh. Question for you actually. I wanted to understand using Omni, how do I go about prioritization of my accounts? If I have a set of 50 odd accounts, how do I go
yeah,
about figuring out who do I reach out first, or who do I
yeah.
prioritize first?
We have our own proprietary scoring mechanism, so you could run mini accounts, like upload a CSV, for example, of them all, and then we'll research all of them, looking for the volume of evidence of opportunity, and then stack rank them based on the ones we find the most evidence for. So you can start there.
Understood. So, great. How controllable is that? Like, for example, if the result is something which I don't like, what is the level of control I have in place, which basically makes me more contextual as per my organization needs? Like, for example, I work with BrowserStack, which is an interesting world. We provide real device cloud for testers. So the signals, the data points which I need for me to prioritize, how do I check if that is the correct way to go about in IOME or not? Is that doable?
I'll tell you what, Anil, we have to drop, but I'll put my calendar link here, and then yeah, let's set up a call because I would love to
Awesome.
chat with you more about just this.
Yeah,
Sure.
short answer. Short answer is yes. A lot of it has to do with how you train the models, right? So you got to teach the AI about your own value proposition. But this is a longer discussion. So
Yep.
calendar link
Awesome.
is in the chat.
Awesome. Looking
Great
forward
question,
to it,
Anil.
guys.
Yep. And guys, get back to work, huh? There's a lot of stuff to be done. So appreciate the time. Hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, we'll share the recording afterwards.
Thanks,
Good luck,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.